While I was sorting through decades of family photo albums in my sun-drenched living room, carefully removing yellowed pictures from sticky pages, my phone buzzed with an incoming call. I glanced at the screen and saw my son Joel's name, accompanied by a photo of him holding his newborn daughter Eliza, both with matching dimpled smiles that could melt the hardest heart. Little did I know that answering this call would lead to one of the most humiliating experiences of my life, culminating in a decision that would change our relationship forever. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I set down the brittle album page and reached for my phone, a spark of warmth blooming in my chest at the rare sight of my son's name on the screen. Since becoming a father 6 months ago, Joel's calls had become increasingly infrequent, each one briefer than the last. "Mom," he said without preamble, his voice carrying that particular blend of exhaustion and desperation I recognized from his childhood days when he wanted something but was too proud to ask directly. "How's your week looking? Any chance you're free for a few days?" I chuckled, tucking the phone between my ear and shoulder as I carefully closed the photo album. "I'm retired, honey. My calendar isn't exactly bursting with appointments. What's going on?" "It's Penny," he sighed, and in the background I could hear the unmistakable fussing of a baby working herself up to a full cry. "She's completely burned out with Eliza. The baby isn't sleeping through the night yet, and Penny has this huge presentation coming up at work. We're drowning here, Mom." The baby's fussing escalated to a wail, sharp and insistent. Joel's voice dropped to a whisper, heavy with something that sounded like both exhaustion and shame. "We need help, Mom. Just for a few days." My heart softened immediately. I remembered those early months of parenthood, the bone-deep fatigue, the feeling that you might never sleep a full night again, the way simple tasks became monumental when punctuated by a baby's unpredictable needs. After my husband Frank passed, 5 years ago, I'd promised myself I'd be there for Joel when he needed me. "Of course I'll come," I said, already mentally packing a bag. "I can catch the morning train tomorrow and be there by noon." "You're a lifesaver, Mom. Seriously." The relief in his voice was palpable, and for a moment, he sounded like my little boy again, the one who believed his mother could fix anything. "Penny will be so grateful. She's been saying we should hire a night nurse, but they're so expensive, and with the mortgage payments and the hospital bills from the delivery." He trailed off, but I understood the unspoken implication. I'd been sending Joel and Penny $2,000 each month since they bought their house in the suburbs last year. It wasn't a small amount for me. It came from the life insurance policy Frank had left. But I'd insisted on helping. The housing market was so much harder for young people now than it had been in my day, and I wanted them to have the stability of a home as they started their family. "Don't worry about that," I assured him. "Family helps family. That's what we do." After we hung up, I moved through my modest 2-bedroom apartment with renewed purpose. I pulled my large suitcase from the hall closet and began selecting comfortable clothes that would be practical for baby duty. I packed the novel I'd been meaning to finish, my knitting project, and a few small gifts I'd picked up for Eliza. Soft cotton pajamas with tiny embroidered daisies, a picture book about a grandmother's love, and a handmade stuffed rabbit from the artisan market down the street. For Penny, I selected a luxurious lavender bath soak and some high-end chocolates I'd been saving for a special occasion. We hadn't always had the easiest relationship. Penny was ambitious and career-focused, sometimes a little sharp around the edges. But I understood the pressure she was under, trying to balance new motherhood with her demanding job at the marketing firm. As I packed, I found myself humming, imagining cozy mornings with Eliza in my arms, the weight of her small body against my chest, her downy head beneath my chin. I'd help with midnight feedings, giving Joel and Penny the chance to rest. I'd prepare nutritious meals, keep the house tidy, and maybe even give them an evening out together, something I suspected they hadn't had since the baby was born. That night, I called my neighbor Miriam to ask her to water my plants while I was gone. You're going to help with the baby? How wonderful, she said, genuine warmth in her voice. But Loretta, you make sure they don't take advantage of you. You remember what happened with my daughter-in-law after the twins were born. I went to help for a weekend and didn't leave for 3 months. I laughed, assuring her this would just be for a few days. Joel and Penny need a break, that's all. And honestly, I'm looking forward to some quality time with my granddaughter. Well, just remember you're the grandmother, not the nanny, Miriam said, a hint of warning in her tone. Don't let them treat you like hired help. I dismissed her concerns with a light comment about families pitching in, but as I settled into bed that night, I found myself thinking about what she'd said. Of course, Joel and Penny wouldn't take advantage of me. We were family. I was going because I wanted to, because I loved them. The next morning dawned bright and clear. I took a final walk through my apartment, making sure everything was in order. I paused by Frank's photo on the bedside table, touched his smiling face with my fingertips. Our boy needs help, I whispered to him. I'm going to take care of them, just like we always did. The train ride to the suburbs took just under 2 hours. I watched the city gradually give way to rows of nearly identical houses with carefully manicured lawns. Joel and Penny's neighborhood was one of the newer developments, large homes with impressive facades, but packed so close together you could practically reach out your bedroom window and touch your neighbor's house. As the taxi turned onto their street, I felt a flutter of anticipation. Despite Miriam's warnings, I was genuinely excited to help, to be needed, to be part of this new chapter in my son's life. Nothing gave me more joy than family, and now that Frank was gone, these moments felt even more precious. The taxi pulled up to a handsome 2-story house with gray siding and white trim. The lawn was a little overgrown, and I could see a stack of empty delivery food containers by the garage, small signs of the chaos that comes with a new baby. I paid the driver, hefted my suitcase from the trunk, and made my way up the stone path to the front door. Before I could ring the bell, the car's door swung open to reveal Joel, unshaven and bleary-eyed, with baby Eliza cradled against his shoulder. "Mom," he said, relief washing over his tired face. "Thank God you're here." Joel stepped aside to let me enter, shifting baby Eliza to his other shoulder as he reached for my suitcase. The house smelled of stale coffee and something vaguely sour, perhaps a forgotten bottle or an unwashed burp cloth. Beneath the surface disorder, I could see the bones of a lovely home. Hardwood floors, tall windows letting in streams of afternoon light, a modern open floor plan connecting the living room to a spacious kitchen. "Let me take her," I said already, extending my arms toward Eliza. "You look like you could use a break." Joel surrendered his daughter with visible relief. "She's been fussy all morning. I think she might be teething already, but the pediatrician says it's too early." I cradled Eliza against my chest, drinking in her sweet baby scent beneath the sour notes. Her eyes, Frank's eyes, wide and curious, studied my face. I pressed my lips gently to her forehead, checking for fever the way mothers have done since time began. "She's not warm," I said, swaying instinctively from side to side in the ancient rhythm that soothes babies. "Sometimes they just have fussy days. Don't worry, I've got her now. Why don't you take a shower or grab something to eat?" Relief washed over Joel's face, making him look younger, more like the boy I remembered. "That would be amazing. Penny's been at the office since 6 this morning. She's been sleeping in the guest room during the week so she can get enough rest for work, which means I'm on full night duty." "Where's the guest room?" I asked, looking toward the staircase. "I'll get settled in after I spend some time with this little one." An odd expression flickered across Joel's face. Discomfort, maybe, or embarrassment. He ran a hand through his unkempt hair and glanced away. "Actually, Mom, we've been using the guest room as a temporary office for Penny. She needs a quiet space for her video calls, and with the baby, the only time she can really focus is late at night. Oh, preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story, I said, adjusting Eliza in my arms. That's fine. I can use your office instead then. The office is… well, it's pretty much a storage room right now. We had to clear out the nursery, and everything just kind of ended up in there. He gestured vaguely toward the living room. We thought you could use the pull-out couch. It's not bad, really. I tested it myself. I followed his gaze to a gray sectional sofa positioned directly beneath a large window facing the street. A stack of folded sheets and a single pillow sat at one end, clearly my designated sleeping area. Something cold and unexpected settled in my stomach. I'd come all this way to help them, leaving the comfort of my own home, and they couldn't even provide me with a proper bed? The guest room wasn't even being used for guests, just converted to an office for Penny's convenience. I pushed the thought away immediately, ashamed of my selfishness. They were new parents, struggling and sleep-deprived. The arrangement wasn't ideal, but I hadn't come for a luxury vacation. I'd come to help. The couch is fine, I said, forcing warmth into my voice. I'll be up with Eliza for night feedings anyway, so it makes sense to be downstairs. Joel's shoulders relaxed. Thanks, Mom. I knew you'd understand. He glanced at his watch. I've got a quick meeting I need to jump on. Working from home today. The kitchen's fully stocked, bottles are in the cabinet above the dishwasher, and formula's on the counter. Penny expressed some milk this morning, too. That's in the fridge. Was already backing toward the stairs, words tumbling out in a rushed stream of instructions. Diapers are in the changing table upstairs and in the basket by the couch. She usually naps around 3, but she might be off schedule today. Oh, and we've been trying to limit screen time, so if you could keep the TV volume low. Joel, I interrupted gently. I raised you, remember? I think I can handle one little baby for a few hours. Go, take your meeting, have a shower, get some rest. We'll be fine. He flashed a grateful smile and disappeared upstairs, leaving me alone with Eliza in the quiet living room. I looked down at my granddaughter, her tiny fingers curling around my thumb. Well, little one, I whispered. It's just you and me now. Over the next few hours, I settled into a rhythm with Eliza. She was indeed fussy, but responded well to gentle bouncing and soft singing. I found her bottle supplies and prepared a formula feed when she began rooting against my chest, hungry despite having been fed just before my arrival. As the afternoon wore on, I began to notice more details about the house. Despite its beautiful features, it was in a state of barely contained chaos. Laundry baskets overflowed in the hallway. The sink was stacked with unwashed bottles and plates. Delivery menus were scattered across the kitchen counter alongside unopened mail and baby products still in their packaging. While Eliza finally dozed in the swing I'd set up, I quietly began to restore some order. I loaded the dishwasher, wiped down countertops, and sorted through the pile of mail, setting aside bills in one stack and everything else in another. I found cleaning supplies under the sink and was just finishing a quick scrub of the stovetop when I heard footsteps on the stairs. A woman appeared in the kitchen doorway, slender and composed in a tailored blazer and pencil skirt, her dark hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail. Despite the professional attire, the shadows under her eyes betrayed her exhaustion. "Loretta," she said, her voice cool but not unfriendly. "You made it. Sorry I wasn't here when you arrived." "Penny," I smiled, setting down the sponge and wiping my hands on a dish towel. "It's good to see you. Don't worry about it. Joel and I managed just fine, and Eliza's been an angel." Penny's gaze moved from me to the now gleaming kitchen, a flicker of something, surprise, embarrassment, crossing her face. "You didn't have to clean up. That wasn't why Joel asked you to come." "It's no trouble," I assured her. "I know how overwhelming things can get with a newborn. I thought I'd help out wherever I could." She nodded, her expression softening slightly. Well, thank you. It's been challenging, especially with my presentation coming up. She glanced at her watch. I actually need to get back to the office for a late meeting. Will you be okay with Eliza? Joel should be done with his call soon. Of course, I said, trying to hide my surprise. I'd assumed she was home for the day. We'll be just fine. Don't worry about us. Penny hesitated, then stepped forward and placed a hand briefly on my arm. We really appreciate you coming, Loretta. I know it was short notice. Before I could respond, she was already turning away, keys in hand. The front door opened and closed, and I was alone again with my sleeping granddaughter and the lingering scent of Penny's expensive perfume. I sighed, looking around at the half-finished cleaning, and then at the couch that would be my bed for the foreseeable future. The reality of the situation was beginning to sink in, but I pushed my misgivings aside. They needed me, and that was what mattered. Everything else was just details. As evening descended, the reality of my sleeping arrangement became increasingly apparent. The pull-out couch, once fully extended, revealed a thin mattress with a pronounced valley in the center. The sheets Joel had left were mismatched, a fitted sheet too small to properly cover the corners, and a top sheet that had seen better days. The single pillow was flat and lifeless, offering little support. I made up the bed as best I could, tucking and smoothing, trying to create some semblance of comfort. Through the large window, I noticed the neighbor's porch light shone directly in, casting harsh shadows across the makeshift bed. There were no curtains, just thin blinds that left strips of light filtering through. Joel appeared in the living room as I was attempting to adjust the blinds. He'd showered and changed, looking marginally more human than when I'd arrived. "Mom, you didn't have to do all this," he said, gesturing toward the tidied living room and kitchen. "But it looks great. Thanks." "It was no trouble," I replied, still fiddling with the blinds. "Joel, do you have any curtains for this window? It's quite bright with the neighbor's light." He frowned slightly. "No, sorry. We never got around to window treatments down here. Is it going to be a problem?" "I'm sure I'll manage," I said, not wanting to seem ungrateful or difficult, though it might make sleeping a bit challenging. "I'm sure once you're tired enough, you won't even notice," he said with a small laugh that didn't quite acknowledge my concern. "Hey, I ordered dinner. Should be here in 20 minutes. Penny texted that she's picking up something at the office, so it's just us tonight." I nodded, tamping down my disappointment. I'd hoped we might all have dinner together, a proper family. Eel. "That sounds fine. How's Eliza been with solid foods?" "We haven't really started those yet," Joel admitted. "The pediatrician said we could begin introducing them, but honestly, between work and just managing the basics, we haven't had the energy to deal with the mess and figuring out what she might like." "I could help with that while I'm here," offered. "I still remember all your favorites from when you were a baby. Sweet potatoes were the first thing you truly enjoyed." A genuine smile crossed his face. "I'd forgotten that. Mom, that would be fantastic. Penny's been worried about falling behind on the feeding milestones." The evening passed pleasantly enough. Joel and I ate takeout Chinese food at the kitchen island, while Eliza played on her activity mat. I shared stories of Joel's babyhood, and he talked about his work in software development and the pressures of the recent product launch. The conversation flowed easily, reminding me of how it used to be between us. When Eliza began fussing, I scooped her up without hesitation. "You finish eating," I told Joel. "I've got her." "Thanks, Mom," he said, relief evident in his voice. "Her bedtime routine is pretty simple. Bottle, diaper change, sleep sack, then into the crib. There's a sound machine in her room that plays white noise." I nodded, already heading upstairs with Eliza. The nursery was the one truly finished room. In the house, painted a soft mint green with a woodland animal theme, everything perfectly coordinated and thoughtfully arranged. I settled into the rocking chair with Eliza and her bottle, humming softly as she drank. After changing her diaper and zipping her into the sleep sack, I held her close for a few extra moments, savoring the weight of her in my arms, the perfect smallness of her fingers wrapped around mine. When I finally laid her in the crib, she settled with only a momentary fuss before her eyes began to drift closed. "Sleep tight, little one," I whispered, running a gentle hand over her downy head. I found Joel sprawled on the living room sofa, my bed, scrolling through his phone. He looked up when I entered. "She went down okay?" "Like an angel," I confirmed. "Though she might not stay that way all night." "Yeah, she's been waking up every 2 to 3 hours," he said, standing and stretching. "I can take the first shift if she wakes up. You must be tired from traveling. I'm happy to help with night duty," I assured him. "That's why I'm here, after all." Joel hesitated, looking suddenly uncomfortable. "About that, I was thinking maybe you could handle tonight. I have an early meeting tomorrow that I really can't be yawning through." I blinked, surprised by the bluntness of the request. "Of course," I said after a moment. "That's fine." "Great," he said, already heading for the stairs. "Penny might be late, so don't wait up. Baby monitor's on the coffee table. Oh, and Mom, the bathroom down here is kind of a mess. We've been using it for storage. You might want to use the one upstairs if you need to." With that, he disappeared upstairs, leaving me standing beside my makeshift bed, feeling strangely displaced in my son's home. I sat down on the edge of the pull-out sofa, wincing as the springs creaked beneath me. The neighbor's porch light continued to shine through the blinds, casting striped shadows across the room. I unpacked my small toiletry bag, considering Joel's warning about the downstairs bathroom. Curiosity got the better of me, and I peeked inside. A mess was an understatement. The small space was piled with storage containers, a disassembled exercise bike, and various household items, leaving barely enough room to reach the sink. The shower curtain was drawn, but based on the shapes behind it, the tub appeared to be serving as additional storage space. With a sigh, I gathered my nightgown and toiletries and headed upstairs. The upper hallway was dark, with Joel's bedroom door already closed. I used the main bathroom as quietly as possible, changing into my nightgown and completing my bedtime routine. Back downstairs, I settled onto the pull-out bed, trying to find a comfortable position in the valley of the mattress. The sheets felt slightly damp in the cool evening air, and the single pillow offered little support. Through the blinds, the neighbor's light continued its intrusion, bright enough that I could clearly see every detail of the living room despite the late hour. I laid there, staring at the ceiling, listening to the unfamiliar creaks and hums of Joel and Penny's house. A text message alert broke the silence, Miriam checking if I'd arrived safely. I typed out a quick response, assuring her everything was fine, though I left out the details of the sleeping arrangement and the converted bathroom. As I set my phone aside, I couldn't help but recall Miriam's warning. "Remember, you're the grandmother, not the nanny." I pushed the thought away. Of course I wasn't the nanny. I was helping my son during a difficult transition. If that meant sleeping on an uncomfortable couch and handling night duty, so be it. Family helped family. That's what we did. Still, as I turned onto my side, trying to find a position that didn't make my hip ache, I couldn't quite suppress the feeling that something about this arrangement wasn't quite right. Not the loving family reunion I'd imagined when I eagerly packed my bag just yesterday morning. The baby monitor crackled with Eliza's first small sounds of restlessness just as I was finally drifting off. I pushed myself up from the sagging mattress, prepared to fulfill my promised night duty. As I climbed the stairs, I reminded myself why I was here. For Eliza, for Joel, for family. The discomfort was temporary, the love permanent. At least, that's what I told myself as I entered the nursery to soothe my fussing granddaughter. Morning arrived with painful clarity, sunlight streaming through the ineffective blinds directly onto my face. I'd managed perhaps 3 hours of fragmented sleep between Eliza's night wakings. Each time she cried, I'd dutifully climbed the stairs, changed her, fed her, rocked her back to sleep, then returned to my increasingly uncomfortable pull-out bed, only to repeat the cycle an hour or two later. I sat up slowly, my back protesting after a night on the unforgiving mattress. The house was quiet except for the soft hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of a shower running upstairs. I folded the sheets back and began the process of converting the bed back into a couch, not wanting Joel and Penny to come downstairs to the sight of my rumpled sleeping area. By the time Penny appeared in the kitchen, dressed in another impeccable work outfit, I had already prepared coffee and was warming a bottle for Eliza, who would likely wake soon. "Good morning," I said, offering a smile despite my exhaustion. "Coffee's fresh if you'd like some." Penny looked momentarily surprised, as if she hadn't expected to find me functional at this hour. "Thanks, Loretta. Did Eliza sleep okay?" "She woke up a few times," I said, keeping my tone light. "Pretty typical for her age." Penny nodded, pouring coffee into a travel mug. "She's been a challenging sleeper from the start. Nothing like my sister's baby. That child slept through the night at 8 weeks. She added cream to her coffee and glanced at her watch. "I need to be at the office early today. Joel's working from home again, but he has calls most of the morning." "Don't worry about us," I assured her. "Eliza and I will be just fine." She hesitated, tapping her manicured nails against the travel mug. "There's a load of baby clothes in the washing machine that needs to be moved to the dryer. And if you could run the dishwasher at some point, that would be helpful." The requests were reasonable enough, but something in her tone, the casual expectation, the lack of a question, grated slightly. I reminded myself that she was under pressure, preparing for an important presentation. "Of course," I said. "Happy to help." The baby monitor crackled with Eliza's morning noises, not quite crying yet, but the babbling that preceded hunger. I reached for the prepared bottle. "I'll get her," I said, already moving toward the stairs. "Great. Her clean onesies are in the second drawer. The white ones are for daytime, the patterned ones for sleep." Penny secured the lid on her travel mug. We try to keep her on a schedule. Bottle at 7, nap around 9:30, another bottle at 11, and so on. There's a chart on the fridge. I nodded, somewhat surprised by the regimented approach. When Joel was a baby, I'd followed his cues more than the clock, but every parent had their own style. "And Loretta?" Penny added as she gathered her keys and bag. "We're trying to limit picking her up when she's just fussing but not really crying. The pediatrician says it's important for her to learn self-soothing." With that final instruction, she was gone, the front door closing behind her with a decisive click. I stood for a moment in the kitchen, processing the interaction, before Eliza's babbling escalated to more insistent sounds. The day unfolded in a blur of baby care and household tasks. Joel emerged briefly between calls, grabbing coffee and offering distracted thanks before disappearing back upstairs to his home office. I changed Eliza, fed her, played with her on her activity mat, and walked her around the house when she fussed, despite Penny's instructions about self-soothing. During Eliza's morning nap, I tackled the laundry Penny had mentioned, plus 2 additional loads I discovered in overflowing hampers. I emptied and reloaded the dishwasher, wiped down kitchen surfaces, and even managed to vacuum the living room and dining area, careful not to disturb the baby monitor where it sat on the coffee table. By late afternoon, bone-deep fatigue had set in. I hadn't slept well, hadn't stopped moving all day, and my back ached from the combination of the pull-out bed and hours of holding Eliza. I longed for a hot shower and a proper meal. I'd been so busy I'd only managed to grab a granola bar and some fruit for lunch. When Joel finally emerged from his office looking refreshed and energized, I was sitting on the couch with Eliza, reading her a board book while she batted at the colorful pages. "Hey, the house looks great," he said, glancing around. And you two seem to be getting along famously. She's a delight, I said, meaning it despite my exhaustion. Though I think she's getting hungry again. I can take her for a bit, Joel offered, reaching for his daughter. You must be tired. The relief of having my arms free was immediate. I stretched discreetly, trying to ease the knots in my shoulders. A little, I admitted. I might take a quick shower if that's okay. Of course, Joel said, bouncing Eliza gently. Oh, but use our bathroom upstairs. The shower in the downstairs bathroom doesn't work. Something wrong with the plumbing. I nodded, gathering my toiletries and a change of clothes from my suitcase, which still sat where I'd left it by the front door. As I headed upstairs, I couldn't help feeling like a guest in the most technical sense, allowed to use the facilities but not truly welcomed into the home. The master bathroom was spacious and well-appointed, with a glass-enclosed shower and double sinks. I showered quickly, not wanting to impose, though the hot water was heaven on my aching muscles. As I was drying off, I noticed Penny's collection of expensive skincare products arranged on the counter, creams and serums in elegant packaging, with French names. I dressed in fresh clothes and made my way back downstairs, feeling somewhat revived. Joel was in the kitchen, attempting to prepare a bottle one-handed while Eliza fussed in his arms. Here, let me help, I offered, taking the baby while he finished with the formula. Thanks, Mom. Penny just texted. She's bringing home dinner from that new bistro downtown. Should be here in about 20 minutes. That sounds lovely, I said, genuinely pleased at the prospect of a proper meal shared together. When Penny arrived, arms laden with bags from an upscale restaurant, the three of us, 4 including Eliza, gathered around the dining table for the first time. The food was delicious. Some kind of deconstructed Mediterranean cuisine with names I couldn't pronounce but flavors I could appreciate. The conversation flowed more easily than I expected, with Penny sharing stories from her office, and Joel recounting a client's impossible demands. I found myself relaxing, enjoying the family dinner I'd hoped for. Perhaps things were looking up. By the way, Mom, Joel said as we were finishing our meal, Penny and I were thinking of going out tomorrow night. Her sister's in town, and we had planned a double date with her and her husband weeks ago. Would you mind watching Eliza? It would just be for a few hours. Of course not, I said automatically. I'd be happy to. Great, Penny chimed in, her tone warmer than it had been previously. It'll be our first real night out since Eliza was born. We've barely left the house except for work. You deserve some time to yourselves, I agreed, remembering how precious those rare evenings out had been when Joel was an infant. And Loretta, Penny added, her voice taking on a careful quality that immediately put me on alert. We were wondering if you might be able to stay a bit longer than the weekend, maybe through next Wednesday. My presentation is Tuesday, and having you here would be such a help. I hesitated, mentally reviewing my calendar. I'd only packed for a few days and I'd promised to help Miriam with her community garden project on Monday, but the hopeful expressions on both their faces made it difficult to refuse. I'd need to go home for more clothes, I said finally, and I'd have to reschedule a few things. We can get your clothes washed, Joel said quickly, and whatever you need we can pick up for you. Please, Mom, it would mean a lot to us. I looked at their tired faces, at Eliza contentedly sleeping in her swing near the table, and felt my resolve weaken. All right, I said. I can stay until Wednesday. The relief on their faces was immediate and palpable. They exchanged a quick glance that I couldn't quite interpret before Penny reached over and briefly squeezed my hand. Thank you, Loretta. You have no idea how much this helps us. As I lay on the pull-out couch that night, staring at the now familiar stripes of light from the neighbor's porch lamp, I tried to quell the growing sense that I had crossed some invisible line, that what had begun as a helpful visit was shifting into something else entirely. But each time doubt surfaced, I pushed it away. They needed me. And wasn't that what family was for? The next morning established what would become my new routine. I woke early after another night of interrupted sleep, my body aching in places I didn't know could ache. The sunlight once again found its way through the blinds, but this time I was prepared, having positioned my pillow to avoid the direct glare. I quietly converted the sofa back to its daytime form and made my way to the kitchen to prepare coffee. Upstairs, I could hear the shower running and doors opening and closing as Joel and Penny prepared for their day. The baby monitor remained silent, a small mercy after Eliza's particularly restless night. Penny appeared first, already dressed, in slim-fitting trousers and a silk blouse, her hair perfectly styled despite the early hour. "Morning," she said, making a beeline for the coffee pot. "Eliza was up a lot last night." "Yes," I agreed, keeping my tone neutral. "4 times, I believe." Penny had the grace to look slightly abashed. "Sorry about that. Joel and I didn't hear her." I bit back my initial response, that they hadn't heard her because they'd closed their bedroom door and turned off their monitor, and instead offered a smile. "That's why I'm here." She poured her coffee and leaned against the counter. "About tonight, we'll probably leave around 6 and be back by 11 at the latest. Eliza usually goes down around 7:30, but she might be fussier with us gone." "We'll be fine," I assured her. "You and Joel deserve a night out." "I left a list on the fridge," she continued as if I hadn't spoken. "It has emergency numbers, her bedtime routine steps, and where to find everything you might need." I glanced at the fridge where a full page of typed instructions was now displayed prominently. "That's very thorough," I said, trying not to feel insulted by the implication that I couldn't handle an evening with my own granddaughter. "And if you could fold the laundry in the dryer before we get home, that would be amazing," Penny added, checking her watch. "I've got to run." "Early meeting with the creative team." She was gone before I could respond, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor, the front door opening and closing with practiced efficiency. I stood in the kitchen, coffee cup in hand, staring at the lengthy instruction sheet now adorning the refrigerator. Joel appeared minutes later, his hair still damp from the shower. "Morning, Mom. Was that Penny leaving?" "Yes, she had an early meeting." I handed him a mug of coffee. "Joel, about tonight?" "I know, Mom, we really appreciate it," he said, misinterpreting my hesitation. "It'll be the first time we've been out together since before Eliza was born. Penny's been so stressed with this presentation coming up, and some adult conversation will do us both good." "Of course," I said, letting my concern fade in the face of his enthusiasm. "I'm happy to help." His smile was warm and genuine. "You're the best, Mom. Seriously." He gulped down his coffee and grabbed an energy bar from the pantry. "I've got back-to-back calls until lunch, but I'll try to come down between them." As Joel disappeared upstairs, I sank into a kitchen chair, suddenly overwhelmed by the reality of my situation. What had started as a short visit to help my son and daughter-in-law through a rough patch was clearly becoming something else entirely. The instruction sheet on the fridge, the casual way Penny had mentioned the laundry, the fact that neither of them had heard Eliza during the night despite her crying. It all painted a picture I was reluctant to fully acknowledge. The baby monitor crackled with Eliza's morning sounds, pulling me from my thoughts. I made my way upstairs to the nursery, where my granddaughter was already awake, batting at the mobile above her crib. "Good morning, sweet girl," I cooed, lifting her into my arms. Her answering smile, gummy and wide, melted away some of my concerns. "Let's get you changed and fed, shall we?" The day proceeded much like the previous one, with Eliza and me establishing our own rhythm within the structure Penny had outlined. I followed the feeding schedule on the chart, though I allowed myself some flexibility when Eliza seemed hungry earlier or not interested at the designated times. During her morning nap, I tackled the laundry Penny had mentioned and prepared a simple lunch for myself. Joel appeared briefly at noon, grabbing a sandwich before disappearing back upstairs for more calls. The house was quiet, except for the occasional sound from the baby monitor and the steady hum of the dryer. By mid-afternoon, I decided to take Eliza for a walk, needing fresh air and a change of scenery. I strapped her into the stroller and ventured out into the neighborhood. The late spring day was perfect, sunny but not too warm, with a gentle breeze carrying the scent of freshly cut grass and blooming flowers. As we strolled along the sidewalk, a woman around my age approached from the opposite direction, walking a small dog. She smiled as we neared each other. "What a beautiful baby," she said, stopping to peer into the stroller. "How old?" 6 months, I replied, feeling a surge of grandmotherly pride. "You certainly don't look old enough to be her grandmother," the woman said with a friendly smile. Hesitated for just a moment before responding. "Thank you, but that's exactly what I am. Her grandmother." The woman's smile faltered slightly, confusion crossing her features. "Oh, I'm sorry, I just assumed, well, with so many women having babies later these days." "No apology necessary," I assured her, though something about the interaction left me feeling strangely displaced, as if I'd temporarily stepped into someone else's life. We chatted for a few more minutes. Her name was Cornelia. She lived 3 doors down from Joel and Penny, before continuing on our separate ways. As I pushed the stroller back toward the house, I found myself reflecting on Cornelia's assumption. She had mistaken me for Eliza's mother, not her grandmother. In her eyes, I wasn't visiting family. I was the primary caregiver. Back at the house, I found a note from Joel on the kitchen counter. Had to run to the office for an emergency meeting. Be back by 5:30 to get ready for dinner. Thanks, Mom, I sighed, settling Eliza into her swing while I prepared her bottle. It seemed I was on my own until Joel and Penny needed to leave for their evening out. True to his word, Joel returned at precisely 5:30, rushing upstairs to shower and change. Penny arrived shortly after, bringing with her a flurry of activity as she too prepared for their night out. "We'll be at Costello's downtown if you need to reach us," Penny said as she applied lipstick in the hallway mirror. "But only call if it's an emergency. We've barely had 5 minutes alone in months." "Everything will be fine," I assured her, gently bouncing Eliza in my arms. "Go, enjoy yourselves." Joel appeared, dressed in a button-down shirt I didn't recognize, and freshly shaven. He kissed Eliza's forehead and touched my shoulder lightly. "Thanks again, Mom. There's money on the counter if you want to order dinner for yourself." With a final flurry of instructions and goodbye kisses for Eliza, they were gone, the house suddenly quiet in their absence. I looked down at my granddaughter, who gazed back at me with Joel's eyes. "Well, little one," I said softly, "it's just you and me tonight." The evening passed peacefully. I fed Eliza, gave her a bath, marveling at how much she enjoyed the water, just as Joel had, and settled her into her crib following Penny's detailed instructions. She fell asleep with surprising ease, her tiny fingers wrapped around my thumb until the last moment. Downstairs, I folded the laundry as requested, then ordered a simple pasta dish from a local restaurant using the delivery app on my phone. I ate alone at the kitchen island, the house unnervingly quiet without Eliza's babbling or the constant background noise of Joel's conference calls. After dinner, I noticed a stack of mail on the side table that had been there since my arrival. Out of habit more than intention, I began sorting it into categories: bills, advertisements, personal correspondence. Among the stack was an envelope from the mortgage company marked "Urgent Second Notice." I stared at it, a cold feeling settling in my stomach. I knew I shouldn't open it. It wasn't my mail after all, but the second notice marking concerned me deeply. Joel and Penny had a beautiful home, but were they struggling to maintain it? Was that why they seemed so stressed? Why they both worked such long hours? I set the envelope aside with the other bills, trying to push away my concern. It wasn't my business. And yet, as I prepared for another night on the pull-out couch, I couldn't help wondering if there was more to my extended invitation than just helping with Eliza. Joel and Penny returned home just after midnight, their voices drifting in from the entryway. Penny's slightly louder than necessary, Joel's a low murmur urging quiet. I had long since retired to the pull-out couch, but hadn't been able to fall asleep, my mind still circling around the mortgage notice I'd seen earlier. I kept my eyes closed as they passed through the living room, pretending to be asleep. Through barely parted lids, I could see Penny had removed her heels, carrying them in one hand while she steadied herself against Joel with the other. "Was she okay?" Penny whispered, gesturing vaguely in my direction. "Seems like it," Joel replied softly. "Let's check on Eliza." Their footsteps receded up the stairs, and I released a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Minutes later, I heard them moving around upstairs. Water running, drawers opening and closing, muffled conversation I couldn't quite make out. Eventually, their bedroom door closed, and the house fell silent again. I shifted on the lumpy mattress, trying to find a comfortable position. 4 nights on the pull-out couch had done nothing to improve its quality, and my back protested with every movement. The neighbor's porch light continued its nightly intrusion through the blinds, casting the now familiar striped pattern across the ceiling. Sleep came eventually, fragmented and restless. Eliza woke twice during the night, and each time I dutifully climbed the stairs to tend to her, changing her diaper and rocking her back to sleep despite my own exhaustion. Neither Joel nor Penny stirred during these nocturnal visits. Morning arrived with the harsh brightness that had become my daily wake-up call. I sat up slowly, my joints stiff and aching, and began the now familiar ritual of converting the bed back into a couch. As I folded the sheets, I noticed a dark stain on the fitted sheet, wine from the looks of it, probably from a previous guest. I sighed, adding wash bedding to my mental list of tasks for the day. The house remained quiet well past its usual morning activity time. I made coffee, prepared a bottle for Eliza, and waited. When the baby monitor finally crackled with her morning sounds, I climbed the stairs once again. Eliza was fully awake, kicking her legs energetically when she saw me. I changed her, dressed her in a clean onesie, and brought her downstairs for her morning bottle. Still no sign of Joel or Penny. It was nearly 10 WIO when Joel finally appeared, looking rumpled and slightly pale. He squinted against the kitchen light, reaching immediately for the coffee pot. "Morning, Mom," he mumbled, pouring himself a generous cup. "Sorry, we slept in. Penny's sister ordered champagne at dinner, and we might have overdone it a bit." "No problem," I said, keeping my tone neutral despite the resentment bubbling just beneath the surface. "Eliza and I have been up for hours. She's already had her bottle and some tummy time." Joel nodded absently, sipping his coffee. "Thanks for handling that. Penny's still asleep. The presentation's tomorrow, and she needs all the rest she can get." I bounced Eliza gently on my knee, weighing my next words, carefully. "Joel, I noticed a letter from the mortgage company yesterday when I was sorting the mail." It was marked "Second Notice." His posture stiffened immediately, a flash of something, anger, embarrassment, crossing his face. "You were going through our mail?" "Not going through it," I clarified, taken aback by his tone. "Just sorting? I didn't open anything." "Well, it's nothing to worry about," he said dismissively, though the tightness around his eyes suggested otherwise. "Just a mix-up with the automatic payment system. I've got it under control." I nodded, not entirely convinced but unwilling to push the issue. "All right. I just wanted to make sure everything was okay." "Everything's fine, Mom," he said, his voice regaining its usual rhythm. "Thanks for your concern, but we're managing." And uncomfortable silence fell between us, broken only by Eliza's occasional babbles. Joel finished his coffee in large gulps, then set the empty mug in the sink. "I've got some work to catch up on," he said, already moving toward the stairs. "Can you manage Eliza for a few more hours?" "Of course," I replied automatically, though a part of me wanted to remind him that I'd been managing Eliza almost exclusively since my arrival. The day progressed much like the previous ones, with one notable exception. An increasingly persistent ache had developed in my lower back, radiating down into my right hip. Years of gardening and an old injury from a fall had left me with occasional back problems, but the pull-out couch had exacerbated the condition to a new level of discomfort. By mid-afternoon, I found myself wincing with each movement, struggling to lift Eliza from her crib or the floor without sharp pain shooting through my spine. I tried to mask my discomfort, not wanting to appear incapable, but it was becoming increasingly difficult to perform the simplest tasks. Penny emerged from her bedroom around 3:00, looking refreshed after her extended sleep. She was dressed casually, in yoga pants and a loose sweater, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, a stark contrast to her usual polished appearance. "There's my girl," she cooed, taking Eliza from me with a smile. "Were you good for Grandma?" "She's been wonderful," I said, unable to suppress a grimace as I straightened up after passing the baby. Penny's eyes narrowed slightly. "Are you okay? Loretta? You look uncomfortable." I hesitated, reluctant to complain but unable to hide my discomfort any longer. "It's just my back," I admitted. "The pull-out couch is a bit challenging for someone my age, especially after several nights." I expected sympathy, perhaps even concern, but Penny's expression remained neutral, almost clinical. "That's too bad. Have you taken anything for it? I think we have some ibuprofen in the medicine cabinet upstairs." "I've taken some," I said, trying to keep the disappointment from my voice. "It helps a little." Penny nodded, her attention already shifting to Eliza. "I need to review my presentation one more time before tomorrow. Can you watch her for another hour or so? I promise I'll take over after that so you can rest your back." "Of course," I said, though the prospect of another hour of lifting and carrying Eliza made my back throb in anticipation. True to her word, Penny returned an hour later to take Eliza, allowing me to stretch out on the couch, not pulled out as it was still daytime, and try to find a position that didn't aggravate my pain. I could hear them upstairs, Penny's voice rising and falling as she read to Eliza or responded to her babbles. Joel returned from the office around 6:00, bringing takeout for dinner, burgers and fries, nothing like the healthy meals I tried to prepare for him growing up. We ate together at the kitchen island, Eliza in her high chair playing with small pieces of bun. "Mom's having some back trouble," Penny mentioned casually between bites. "The pull-out couch isn't working well for her." Joel looked at me with genuine concern. "Why didn't you say something earlier? Is it bad?" "It's manageable," I said, not wanting to make a fuss. "Just an old problem flaring up." Joel and Penny exchanged a quick glance I couldn't interpret. "We could try to rearrange some things in the guest room," Joel offered hesitantly. "Maybe clear enough space for the air mattress." "The air mattress has a leak," Penny reminded him. "Remember, we tried to use it when my parents visited at Christmas?" "Right," Joel said, deflating slightly. "Well, the pull-out is brand new. Maybe it just needs some breaking in." The conversation moved on to other topics. Penny's upcoming presentation, Joel's work deadlines, plans for the weekend. My back pain, it seemed, was a closed subject. No real solutions offered, just acknowledgement and then dismissal. After dinner, I insisted on cleaning up despite my discomfort, unable to leave the kitchen in its disordered state. As I loaded the dishwasher, I heard Joel and Penny in the living room, their voices low but intense. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone suggested disagreement. When I finished in the kitchen and made my way back to the living room, they fell silent abruptly. Penny was bouncing Eliza on her lap, her smile too bright, while Joel studied something on his phone with unnatural focus. "I think I'll take a hot shower," I said, gathering my toiletries. "It might help with my back." "Good idea, Mom," Joel said, not looking up from his phone. Use our bathroom upstairs. The hot water pressure is better. As I climbed the stairs, each step sending a jolt of pain through my hip, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had become an inconvenience, that my physical discomfort had transformed me from helpful grandmother to problematic houseguest. The warmth and appreciation that had marked my arrival seemed to have cooled, replaced by something that felt uncomfortably like tolerance. In the shower, I let the hot water cascade over my aching muscles, tears mixing with the spray as I finally allowed myself to acknowledge what I'd been feeling since that first night. I wasn't a cherished family member here. I was unpaid help, expected to manage Eliza and household tasks without complaint, sleeping on an inadequate bed, my comfort an afterthought at best. As I toweled off and changed into my nightclothes, I made a decision. Tomorrow, after Penny left for her presentation, I would talk to Joel. Not accusatory, not demanding, but honest about my physical limitations and my need for a proper place to sleep. Surely my son, the boy I'd raised with love and care, would understand and make adjustments. With that resolution, I made my way back downstairs to face another night on the pull-out couch, hope and apprehension battling for dominance in my mind. The morning of Penny's big presentation dawned with unexpected commotion. I'd been awake since 5:30, my back pain having reached a level that made lying down more uncomfortable than sitting up. I was in the kitchen preparing coffee when Penny rushed downstairs, already dressed in a sharp charcoal suit, her face a mask of controlled panic. "Have you seen my presentation folder?" she asked without preamble. "The blue one with the company logo? I had it on the kitchen counter yesterday." "I haven't seen it," I replied, trying to recall if I'd moved anything during my cleaning. "Could it be in your office upstairs?" She shook her head, rifling through the stack of mail I'd organized days earlier. "I brought it down to review during dinner. It has all my notes and backup slides. I need it for today." I joined the search, checking under furniture and between couch cushions despite the protests from my back. Joel appeared moments later, summoned by the commotion, and joined the increasingly frantic hunt. The folder eventually turned up tucked inside a cookbook on the kitchen shelf, placed there, Penny recalled with visible relief when she'd been looking up a recipe while reviewing her notes. "Thank God," she breathed, clutching the folder to her chest. "I thought I was going to have a heart attack." "You're going to do great today," I assured her, handing her a travel mug of coffee I'd prepared. "You've worked so hard on this." A flicker of gratitude crossed her face as she accepted the coffee. "Thanks, Loretta. For the coffee and, well, for everything this week. Having you here has been a huge help." It was the most direct acknowledgement of my assistance she'd offered, and, despite my discomfort and frustration, I felt a warm flutter of appreciation. "That's what family does," I said simply. After Penny left, the house settled into relative quiet, with just the occasional ping from Joel's laptop as he worked in the dining room rather than his upstairs office. Eliza was unusually fussy that morning, refusing her bottle and crying whenever I set her down. I walked her in circles around the living room, each step sending jolts of pain through my lower back, but unable to put her down without setting off fresh wails. "Is she okay?" Joel called from the dining room after a particularly loud bout of crying. "Just having a difficult morning," I replied, continuing my circuit of the living room. "Babies have their moods, just like the rest of us." Joel appeared. In the doorway, concern etched on his face. "You look exhausted, Mom, and you're walking funny. Is your back still bothering you?" This was the opening I'd been waiting for, the chance to have the conversation I'd planned last night. I took a deep breath, adjusting Eliza in my arms. "It's pretty bad today," I admitted. "Joel, I need to talk to you about my sleeping arrangements. The pull-out couch is making my back worse, and with all the lifting I'm doing with Eliza, I'm not sure how much longer I can manage." Joel ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so reminiscent of his father that it momentarily caught me off guard. "Mom, I'm sorry about the couch. I really am. But we don't have many options right now. The guest room is Penny's office, and with her presentation today and all the follow-up that will come after. I understand that, I said, trying to keep my voice gentle despite my frustration. But I'm in real pain, Joel. Maybe I should go home a day early, get some rest in my own bed, and come back when you've had a chance to clear some space for me. A flash of panic crossed his face. Go home? Mom, we need you here. Penny's presentation is today, but she still has meetings all week. And I've got that product launch on Friday. I'm already behind because I've been trying to help with Eliza. In the evenings. I'm not saying I won't help, I clarified, bouncing Eliza gently as her fussing increased. Just that I might need a day to recover. My apartment is only 2 hours away. I could come back tomorrow or Thursday. Joel's expression shifted subtly, something calculating replacing the panic. What if we got you a massage? There's a great place near here, very therapeutic. It might help your back without you having to leave. The suggestion caught me off guard. It was thoughtful, certainly, but missed the fundamental issue, that I needed proper rest on a proper bed. A massage would be nice, I said slowly, but it won't solve the problem if I'm still sleeping on the pull-out couch. Joel nodded, looking thoughtful. Let me make some calls. I think my friend Hudson has an air mattress we could borrow. A good one, not like our leaky one. And maybe we could clear enough space in the guest room, at least create a corner for you to sleep in. It wasn't an ideal solution, but it was an acknowledgement of the problem and an attempt to address it. I felt some of the tension ease from my shoulders. That would be very helpful, I said. Thank you, Joel. He reached out and squeezed my arm gently. No, Mom. Thank you. I don't know what we would have done without you this week. Penny was so stressed about this presentation, and having you here to help with Eliza and the house, it's been a lifesaver. His words were sincere, his gratitude genuine, and I felt a rush of affection for my son. Yes, the situation was far from perfect, but he was trying in his own way to make it work. How about I take Eliza for a bit? He offered. You sit down, rest your back. I can work on my laptop while she plays on her mat. Gratefully, I handed Eliza over and sank onto the couch, wincing as my back protested even this gentler movement. Joel settled on the floor with Eliza and his laptop, multitasking with the ease of the modern parent. Later that afternoon, while Eliza napped, Joel made good on his promise, returning from his friend's house with an air mattress and electric pump. Together, we managed to clear enough space in one corner of the guest room, Penny's office, for the mattress, though it meant stacking boxes and filing cabinets precariously against the opposite wall. It's not the Ritz, Joel said apologetically as we surveyed our handiwork, but it should be more comfortable than the pull-out. It looks wonderful, I assured him, genuinely grateful for the effort. And it will give me a bit more privacy, too. Privacy, Joel repeated, as if the concept hadn't occurred to him until that moment. Right, of course. You've been sleeping right in the middle of everything, haven't you? I smiled, patting his arm. It's fine, Joel. I'm just grateful for the air mattress. As I inflated the mattress and made it up with fresh sheets Joel had unearthed from the linen closet, I felt a renewed sense of determination. Yes, the past week had been challenging, physically uncomfortable, emotionally draining, but we'd found a compromise. The air mattress represented more than just a better place to sleep. It was a sign that my needs were being recognized, that I wasn't just convenient help, but a person deserving of basic comfort. That evening, Penny returned from her presentation practically glowing with success. They loved it, she announced, dropping her briefcase on the kitchen counter with a triumphant thud. Absolutely loved it. The VP of marketing said it was the most comprehensive analysis he'd seen in years. That's wonderful, I exclaimed, genuinely happy for her. We should celebrate. Already planned, Joel said, emerging from his office with a bottle of champagne. I ordered dinner from that Italian place you like, and Hudson's bringing over dessert from that French bakery. I blinked in surprise. Hudson's coming over? And his wife Miriam? Joel confirmed, pulling champagne flutes from the cabinet. Just for a quick celebration dinner. I hope that's okay? Of course, I said, though I felt a flutter of apprehension. I hadn't met any of their friends yet, and with my back pain and general exhaustion, I wasn't feeling particularly sociable. Don't worry, Penny said, seeming to read my mind. It'll just be a quick dinner, and Miriam's great. You'll like her. An hour later, Hudson and Miriam arrived, bringing with them an elaborate cake and an energy that immediately filled the house. Hudson was tall and boisterous, with a laugh that seemed too big for the room, while Miriam was petite and stylish, her short silver hair perfectly complementing her designer glasses. So you're Joel's mom, Miriam said warmly, clasping my hand in both of hers. He's told us so much about you. It's so wonderful that you've been here helping with little Eliza. They're lucky to have such a dedicated grandmother. Family helps family, I said automatically, the phrase feeling increasingly hollow each time I repeated it. The dinner was pleasant enough, the food excellent, the champagne flowing freely. Hudson and Miriam were charming guests, full of stories and jokes, clearly close friends with Joel and Penny. I participated in the conversation, smiled at the appropriate moments, but increasingly felt like an outsider, the help rather than part of the family celebration. As we finished the elaborate cake, Hudson raised his glass in a final toast. To Penny's successful presentation and to Loretta, the unsung hero who made it all possible by keeping the home fires burning. Everyone clinked glasses, smiling in my direction with appreciation that seemed genuine if somewhat performative. I accepted their thanks graciously, sipping the expensive champagne and ignoring the persistent ache in my lower back. Later, as I settled onto the air mattress in my corner of Penny's office, surrounded by stacked boxes and the harsh glow of her computer monitor which had been left on, I reflected on Hudson's toast. The unsung hero who made it all possible. Was that how they saw me? Not as Joel's mother or Eliza's grandmother, but as the support staff, the person who enabled their success from behind the scenes? The air mattress, while certainly an improvement over the pull-out couch, was still far from comfortable. As I shifted, trying to find a position that didn't aggravate my back, I made a mental note to call my neighbor Cornelia tomorrow about watering my plants. If Joel and Penny needed me to stay through the week for Joel's product launch, I would need to make arrangements. But as I drifted towards sleep, a new thought formed in my mind, quiet but persistent. There was helping family, and then there was being taken advantage of. I wasn't quite sure which side of that line I had fallen on, but I was beginning to suspect it wasn't the one I'd intended. The new sleeping arrangement, while an improvement over the pull-out couch, brought its own challenges. Penny's office doubled as a storage room, and the air mattress occupied what little floor space remained between stacked moving boxes, a filing cabinet, and her desk. The computer monitor cast a blue glow throughout the night, apparently set to never sleep, and the room lacked proper ventilation, growing stuffy and warm by early morning. Still, I was grateful for the relative privacy and the slightly better support for my aching back. I adjusted my routine, rising early to deflate and roll up the mattress each morning, tucking it behind the door to minimize my intrusion into Penny's workspace. My 5th day in Joel and Penny's home began like the others, with Eliza's morning cries, bottle preparation, and the now familiar routine of diaper changes and breakfast. Joel appeared briefly, gulping coffee and mentioning he had an important meeting about Friday's product launch before disappearing into his home office. Penny had already left for an early breakfast with clients, riding the momentum of her successful presentation. As I settled Eliza into her activity gym, my phone rang, the distinctive tone I'd assigned to my bank. Curious, I answered while keeping one eye on my granddaughter. Mrs. Bennett? This is Marcus from First National Bank, came the professional voice. I'm calling regarding the automatic transfer scheduled for today. I wanted to confirm that you intended to transfer $2,000 to the account ending in 4872. I frowned, momentarily confused. Yes, that's my son's account. It's a monthly transfer I've set up. I understand, Marcus continued. The reason for my call is that this transfer would place your account below the minimum balance required to avoid service fees. We wanted to confirm before processing. A cold feeling spread through my chest. Below the minimum balance? That can't be right. I should have plenty of funds in that account. According to our records, Mrs. Bennett, after this transfer, your balance would be approximately $487.32. The minimum to avoid fees is $500. I sat down heavily on the couch, my mind racing. How could my account be so depleted? I'd always maintained a comfortable cushion, especially since Frank's insurance money had been deposited. Then realization dawned. I'd been sending Joel and Penny $2,000 every month for nearly a year, while simultaneously paying for my own living expenses without the additional income from Frank's pension. Mrs. Bennett, are you still there? Marcus prompted. Yes, I'm here, I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. Please hold the transfer for now. I'll need to review my finances and get back to you. After ending the call, I sat in stunned silence, watching Eliza bat happily at the colorful toys dangling above her. The financial reality I'd been avoiding crashed over me in a wave. At this rate, I would deplete my savings entirely within months. Frank's insurance money, meant to support me through my retirement years, was vanishing into Joel and Penny's mortgage payments. And for what? To sleep on an air mattress in a storage room after days of childcare and housekeeping? To be thanked performatively in front of their friends while being treated as convenient help rather than family? I pulled out my phone again and opened my banking app, reviewing the steady outflow of funds over the past year. Each $2,000 transfer was neatly labeled Joel House Help, a reminder of the day my son had called, panic in his voice, saying they were struggling to make the mortgage payment on their new home. What had begun as a one-time emergency assistance had somehow transformed into a monthly expectation. Eliza began to fuss, pulling me from my financial reckoning. I scooped her up, wincing as my back protested, and began the gentle bouncing that usually calmed her. As I paced the living room, my eyes fell on the house around me. The expensive furniture, the top-of-the-line appliances, the tasteful decor. This was no modest starter home. It was an ambitious purchase for a young couple, perhaps too ambitious. The mortgage notice marked "Second Notice" flashed in my memory. Were Joel and Penny struggling despite my monthly contributions? Or had they simply built a lifestyle that required both their incomes plus my support to maintain? I thought of my own apartment, modest but comfortable, filled with memories of the life Frank and I had built together. I thought of the community garden I'd helped establish, the book club that met every Thursday, the watercolor class I'd been meaning to take at the senior center. All the elements of the life I'd been creating for myself since Frank's death, now interrupted and gradually being sacrificed to support Joel and Penny's more extravagant choices. Eliza hiccuped against my shoulder, her tiny body warm and trusting. None of this was her fault, of course. She was an innocent baby who deserved all the love and care in the world. But surely that care didn't have to come at the expense of my financial security and physical well-being. When Joel emerged from his office around noon, I had made a decision. Not an easy one, but necessary, for all of us. "How's my favorite girls?" he asked cheerfully, kissing Eliza's head and giving my shoulder a quick squeeze. "We're fine," I said, keeping my tone light. "Joel, do you have a minute to talk?" He glanced at his watch. "Sure, but make it quick. I've got a call in 15 minutes. We sat at the kitchen island, Eliza contently playing with a soft toy in my lap. I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. "I got a call from my bank this morning," I began. "The monthly transfer to your account would have nearly depleted my checking account." Joel's expression shifted, a flicker of concern quickly, replaced by reassurance. Don't worry about it, Mom. If you need to skip this month, we can make it work. Things are tight with the baby expenses, but Penny's due for a bonus after this presentation. It's not just about this month, Joel, I continued steadily. I've been looking at my finances, and I simply can't continue sending $2,000 every month. It's not sustainable for me. He stared at me, genuine confusion in his eyes. But you have Dad's insurance money, and you always said you wanted to help us get established. I did help you get established, I reminded him gently. But what started? As emergency assistance has become a regular expectation, that insurance money needs to support me through my retirement years. Joel ran a hand through his hair, his expression darkening. So you're just cutting us off? Just like that? Not just like that, I corrected. I'm being practical about my financial future. I could continue a smaller amount, maybe $500 a month for a while, but the $2,000 transfers need to stop. $500? He sounded incredulous. Mom, our mortgage is $3,800 a month. Your contribution barely covers half, and now you want to reduce it to practically nothing? I blinked, taken aback by both the amount of their mortgage and his characterization of $500 as practically nothing. Joel, I said carefully, when you asked for help with the house payments, I had no idea your mortgage was so high. That's a very expensive commitment for two young people just starting a family. His face flushed. We bought what we could afford based on our combined incomes and your promised help. This neighborhood has the best schools for Eliza. I understand wanting the best for her, I said, bouncing Eliza gently as she began to fuss. But I never promised indefinite financial support at that level. I can't drain my retirement funds to subsidize your mortgage. Joel stood abruptly, pushing away from the counter. So, what am I supposed to tell Penny? That we might lose our house because my mother decided our lifestyle is too extravagant. That's not fair, I said, my own anger beginning to rise. I've been helping you financially, caring for Eliza, cleaning your house, sleeping on a pull-out couch, and now an air mattress in a storage room, all while my back gets worse every day. And you're acting like I'm abandoning you by trying to be responsible with my own finances. We stared at each other across the kitchen island, the gulf between us suddenly vast and unfamiliar. This wasn't my little boy anymore. This was a grown man who had made financial choices based on assumptions about my continued support, without considering the impact on my own security. My call is in 5 minutes, he said finally, his voice tight. We'll have to finish this discussion later. As he disappeared back upstairs, I remained at the counter gently rocking Eliza, who had begun to whimper, perhaps sensing the tension. The conversation had gone exactly as I'd feared. Less a discussion than a confrontation, with neither of us truly hearing the other. Yet, despite the discomfort, I felt a strange sense of clarity. For too long, I'd been allowing my desire to help, to be needed, to override my common sense. I'd become so focused on supporting Joel and Penny that I'd neglected my own needs, financial, physical, and emotional. The initial decision to help with their mortgage had come from a place of love. The decision to reduce that help came from a place of necessary self-preservation. Both were valid. Both were choices I had the right to make. As I prepared Eliza's afternoon bottle, I resolved to stand firm. This wasn't about abandoning my son or failing as a mother. This was about establishing healthy boundaries, financial and otherwise, that would ultimately benefit all of us. The conversation with Joel, difficult as it had been, was only the beginning. I knew the real challenge would come when Penny returned home and learned of my decision. But for the first time since arriving at their house, I felt something I'd been missing. The quiet strength that comes from honoring your own worth, even when others might not understand. The afternoon stretched into evening with no further conversation about finances. Joel remained sequestered in his home office, emerging only briefly to grab a protein bar from the kitchen before disappearing again. I maintained our normal routine with Eliza, afternoon bottle, tummy time, a short nap, and then dinner preparations, Back pain had settled into a constant dull ache, occasionally flaring into sharper twinges when I bent to lift Eliza or reached for something on a high shelf. I moved more deliberately now, conscious of every movement, finding small ways to adapt to minimize discomfort. Penny arrived home just after 6, her expression brighter than I'd seen since my arrival. She set her briefcase on the counter and immediately reached for Eliza, who was seated in her high chair while I prepared a simple dinner of baked chicken, roasted vegetables, and rice. "There's my sweet girl," Penny cooed, lifting Eliza into her arms with a genuine smile. "Mommy missed you today," Eliza responded with delighted babbles, patting Penny's cheeks with her tiny hands. It was a tender moment, a glimpse of the maternal bond that sometimes seemed overshadowed by Penny's professional focus. "Something smells amazing," Penny said, turning to me. "You didn't have to cook dinner, Loretta. We could have ordered in." "I don't mind," I replied, sliding the chicken back into the oven for its final few minutes. "Cooking helps me unwind." "Well, it's appreciated," she said sincerely. "After all those restaurant meals with clients, home cooking sounds perfect." Her warmth caught me slightly off guard. Since my arrival, Penny had been polite but distant, her interactions with me focused primarily on Eliza's care or household matters. This more relaxed, appreciative version was a pleasant surprise. "How was your day?" I asked, setting the table as Penny settled Eliza back into her high chair. "Incredible," she replied, her eyes lighting up. "The presentation yesterday opened doors I didn't even know existed. The executive team has fast-tracked my proposal, and they're talking about putting me in charge of the entire campaign." "That's wonderful," I said, genuinely happy for her success. "You've worked hard for this." "I really have," she agreed, pouring herself a glass of water. "It's been such a balancing act with Eliza and everything. Having you here this week has made all the difference. I could actually focus on work knowing she was in good hands." There it was again, sincere appreciation that nevertheless framed my presence primarily in terms of its utility. Still, I accepted. The gratitude with a smile, unwilling to dampen her evident joy. Joel joined us for dinner, his manner subdued but civil. He complimented the meal, asked appropriate questions about Penny's day, and helped clear the dishes afterward, all without making eye contact with me or referencing our earlier conversation. As we finished cleaning the kitchen, Penny refilled her water glass and leaned against the counter, her expression thoughtful. "So, Loretta, Joel mentioned you might be able to stay through the weekend. His product launch is Friday, and we've got that dinner with his boss Saturday night." I paused, caught off guard by the assumption that I would extend my stay even further. The request brought our financial discussion into sharp relief. Joel clearly hadn't mentioned anything to Penny yet. "Actually," I began carefully, "I need to get back to my apartment soon. I only packed for a few days, and I have some appointments I should attend to." Penny's smile faltered slightly. "Oh, I thought, well, we can get your clothes washed again, and I'm sure your appointments could be rescheduled. It would be such a help to have you through the weekend." Before I could respond, Joel interjected, his tone deliberately casual. "Mom and I were talking earlier about her finances. She's thinking of cutting back on her support for our mortgage payments." Penny's expression shifted immediately, her professional poise giving way to genuine surprise. "Cutting back? What do you mean?" I took a deep breath, wishing Joel had found a more diplomatic way to introduce the topic, but recognizing that the conversation needed to happen. "I've been reviewing my financial situation," I explained calmly. "The monthly transfers I've been making are not sustainable for me long term. I need to reduce them significantly to protect my retirement savings." Penny set her glass down with deliberate care. "I see. And you're making this decision now? After we've built our budget around your contribution?" "I'm not cutting off support entirely," I clarified, "but $2,000 a month is more than I can continue to provide." Mom suggests $500 instead, Joel added, his tone making clear what he thought of the reduction. Penny's expression hardened, the warmth of earlier evaporating completely. That's quite a difference. May I ask what prompted this sudden reevaluation? Her professional tone had returned. Cool, slightly detached, the voice she might use in a challenging meeting. I matched it with my own measured response. It wasn't sudden. I've been concerned for some time, but a call from my bank today forced me to confront the reality. My resources are finite, and at this rate, I'll deplete my savings much sooner than anticipated. I understand financial prudence, Penny said carefully, but the timing is challenging. We've just started getting into a rhythm with Eliza. The mortgage payment is due next week. And I'll make the transfer for this month, I assured her. I'm not leaving you in the lurch, but going forward, we need to adjust our expectations. The kitchen fell silent, the only sound Eliza's occasional babbles as she played with a plastic sigh. Ring in her high chair. Joel leaned against the refrigerator, arms crossed, while Penny stood perfectly still, her posture betraying the tension she was clearly feeling. Well, she said finally, her smile thin and professional, I suppose we'll have to review our budget. These things happen. The conversation might have ended there, strained but civil, had Joel not added, and Mom needs to get back to her apartment soon. Her back is bothering her from the sleeping arrangements. Penny's expression flickered with something that might have been guilt, quickly replaced by pragmatism. We did try to accommodate you better with the air mattress. I'm sorry it wasn't comfortable enough. It was an improvement, I acknowledged. But at my age, even a few nights of poor sleep takes a toll. And my back condition makes it more challenging. If you need to leave, we understand, Penny said, though her tone suggested otherwise. Of course, we'll have to hire someone to help with Eliza during Joel's product launch. The agency rates are quite high for last-minute bookings, but we'll manage somehow. The implication was clear. My departure would create both financial and logistical problems. I felt the familiar tug of guilt, the ingrained maternal instinct to sacrifice my own needs for my child's. But beneath that, a newer, stronger voice reminded me of the bank call, of my dwindling resources, of the physical toll the past week had taken. I can stay until Thursday, I offered as a compromise. That would give you time to make other arrangements for Friday and the weekend. Penny nodded crisply. That's helpful. Thank you. She excused herself to give Eliza her bath, leaving Joel and me alone in the kitchen. The silence between us felt leaden, heavy with unspoken words. You didn't have to tell her like that, I said finally, keeping my voice low. How else should I have told her? He replied, equally quiet. That my mother is abandoning us financially when we need her most? That the support she promised is being withdrawn? I never promised indefinite support at that level, I countered. And I'm not abandoning you. I'm being realistic about what I can provide while still securing my own future. Joel's expression softened slightly, a glimpse of the thoughtful son I'd raised. I know you're not rich, Mom, but this house, it's important. For Eliza, for our family's future. We stretched to afford it because we believed in what it could provide for her. I understand that, I said gently. But you and Penny need to live within your means, your actual means, not your means supplemented by my retirement funds. He nodded slowly, though whether in agreement or merely acknowledgement, I couldn't tell. I should help Penny with Eliza's bath, he said, straightening up. We can talk more tomorrow. As he left the kitchen, I began wiping down the counters, my movements automatic as my mind processed the conversation. The confrontation had been uncomfortable but necessary. The first step toward reestablishing boundaries that had gradually eroded over the past year. That night, as I settled onto the air mattress in my corner of Penny's office, I felt strangely at peace despite the tension of the evening. The initial discomfort of asserting my needs was giving way to a quiet certainty that I was making the right choice, not just for myself, but ultimately for Joel and Penny too. My phone buzzed with a text from my neighbor Cornelia, checking if I was still at Joel's and offering to continue watering my plants. As I typed a grateful response, explaining I'd be home Thursday, I felt a surge of longing for my own space, my comfortable bed, my morning routine on the balcony with coffee and the newspaper, the simple pleasure of arranging things according to my own preferences. Soon, I promised myself. Soon I would be back in my own home, reclaiming my independence while finding a more sustainable way to support my son's family. The path forward wasn't entirely clear, but I had taken the first, crucial step. Wednesday morning arrived with an atmosphere of strained politeness. Penny left early for work with a brief goodbye and a quick kiss for Eliza. Joel worked from his home office, emerging occasionally for coffee or to check on Eliza. Our interactions cordial, but lacking the warmth of previous days. I maintained the routine I'd established with Eliza, finding comfort in the predictable rhythm of feedings, naps, and playtime. My back pain had plateaued, not improving but not worsening either, and I'd developed strategies to minimize strain, like sitting to change diapers and using cushions for support when holding Eliza for extended periods. Around mid-morning, while Eliza was napping, I decided to start preparing for my departure the following day. I began gathering my belongings scattered throughout the house, my novel from the coffee table, my cardigan from the back of the dining chair, toiletries from the upstairs bathroom. As I collected my things, I was struck by how thoroughly I'd integrated into their home in just a week, my possessions mingling with theirs as if I'd always been there. I was folding clothes into my suitcase, which I'd retrieved from the hall closet, when Joel appeared in the doorway of Penny's office. "Packing already?" he asked, his tone carefully neutral. "Just getting organized," I replied. "I don't want to leave anything behind tomorrow." He nodded, then hesitated before speaking again. "Listen, Mom, about yesterday, I didn't handle that conversation well. I was caught off guard by your decision, and I reacted poorly. The apology, even partial, softened something in me. Thank you for saying that. I know the timing isn't ideal, and I wish my financial situation were different. I've been thinking about it," he said, leaning against the doorframe. "Maybe we can find a compromise. What if you kept contributing, but at a reduced amount, say, $1,500 instead of $2,000? That would still help us make the mortgage, but might be more manageable for you." I considered his proposal, appreciating the effort at compromise while recognizing it still didn't address the fundamental issue. $2,500 is still too much for me to sustain long-term, I said gently. I could manage $750 for the next 6 months, then reduce to $500 after that. It would give you and Penny time to adjust your budget. Joel's expression tightened slightly, disappointment evident in the set of his mouth. That's still a significant reduction. We'd have to make major changes. Sometimes change is necessary, I said, folding a sweater and placing it in my suitcase. Frank and I lived within our means our entire lives. We made sacrifices to provide for you, but we never overextended ourselves financially. Times are different now, Mom, Joel countered. Housing costs are through the roof. Childcare is astronomical. Student loans, healthcare, everything costs more than when you and Dad were starting out. I understand that, I acknowledged, but the principle remains the same. You build the life you can afford, not the life you wish you could afford. Joel ran a hand through his hair, a gesture that reminded me powerfully of Frank when he was frustrated. We'll figure something out, he said finally, though his tone lacked conviction. I should get back to work. He turned to leave, then paused, looking back at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Penny's mother called this morning. She's offering to come stay with us next week to help with Eliza. The comment landed like a stone in still water, ripples of meaning spreading outward. Penny's mother, The woman who had been too busy to help after Eliza's birth was now suddenly available, just as I was reducing my financial support. "That's nice of her," I managed, keeping my tone even. "I'm sure she'll enjoy spending time with Eliza." Joel nodded once before disappearing down the hallway, leaving me alone with my half-packed suitcase and a growing sense that larger forces were at work than just my decision to reduce financial support. The baby monitor crackled with Eliza's waking sounds, ending my packing session. I made my way to the nursery, my mind still processing the implications of Penny's mother's suddenly convenient availability. The day proceeded quietly, with Joel working upstairs and Eliza and me maintaining our usual routine. I prepared a more elaborate dinner than usual, a roast chicken with herbs, roasted potatoes, and a simple salad, wanting to leave them with a proper home-cooked meal before my departure. Penny arrived home earlier than expected, looking tired but satisfied. "Something smells amazing," she commented, setting down her briefcase and kicking off her heels. "Just a simple roast chicken," I replied, removing the golden brown bird from the oven. "I thought it would be nice for my last night here." "About that?" Penny said, her tone carefully modulated. "Joel mentioned you two discussed a compromise on the financial arrangement?" I nodded, slicing the chicken onto a serving platter. "Yes, I proposed reducing my contribution gradually, $750 for 6 months, then $500 after that. It would give you time to adjust your budget." Penny's smile remained fixed in place, though it didn't reach her eyes. "That's very thoughtful. And have you considered our counter-proposal of $1,500? "I have," I said, meeting her gaze directly. "But it's still more than I can comfortably provide long-term while maintaining my own financial security." "I see." She picked up a serving bowl and carried it to the dining table with precise movements. "Well, we appreciate whatever you can manage. My mother has graciously offered to help us next week, which will save us the cost of a professional nanny." The pointed comment hung in the air between us. I continued preparing the meal in silence, aware that we had reached some kind of turning point in our relationship. Joel joined us for dinner, and the three of us ate with forced pleasantries, discussing safe topics like the unseasonably warm weather and the upcoming community festival. Eliza provided welcome distractions with her babbling and occasional food throwing, giving us all something to react to besides the underlying tension. After dinner, as I loaded the dishwasher, I overheard Joel and Penny in the living room, their voices low but intense. I couldn't make out specific words, but the tone suggested disagreement. Their conversation ended abruptly when I entered the room to say goodnight. "I think I'll turn in early," I said, pretending not to notice the sudden silence. "I want to be well rested for the trip home tomorrow." "Of course," Penny said, her professional mask firmly in place. "What time were you planning to leave? I could work from home in the morning if that would help with the transition." "That's not necessary," I assured her. "I thought I'd catch the 10:30 train if that works for you both. It would give me time to spend a little more time with Eliza in the morning." "Perfect," Joel said, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "I can drive you to the station." I thanked them both and made my way to the air mattress in Penny's office, closing the door behind me. As I prepared for bed, I could hear their conversation resume in the living room, still too quiet to discern words, but with an unmistakable intensity that suggested important decisions were being made. That night, I slept surprisingly well, despite the inadequate air mattress and the lingering uncertainty about my departure. Perhaps it was the knowledge that tomorrow I would return to my own comfortable bed, my own space, my own routines. Or perhaps it was simply the relief of having finally addressed the financial situation that had been weighing on me for months. Morning arrived with unexpected quietness. No Eliza crying through the baby monitor. No sounds of Joel or Penny preparing for their day. I checked my phone. It was already 7:45, well past Eliza's usual wake-up time. Concerned, I made my way through the silent house to the nursery. The door was slightly ajar, and I pushed it open gently to find Penny seated in the rocking chair, Eliza nursing contentedly in her arms. She looked up as I entered, her expression unreadable. "Good morning," I said softly, not wanting to disturb Eliza. I was worried when I didn't hear her on the monitor. "I turned it off," Penny replied, her voice equally soft but with an edge I couldn't quite define. "Thought I'd let you sleep in on your last day. No need for both of us to be up early." "That was thoughtful," I said, though something about her tone left me uncertain. "Is there anything I can do to help?" "We're fine," she said, emphasizing the we slightly. "Joel's made coffee downstairs if you want some." I nodded, backing out of the nursery with the distinct feeling I'd interrupted something private. Not just a feeding, but a moment of bonding that Penny wanted to claim exclusively. In the kitchen, Joel was indeed preparing coffee, already dressed, for the day in casual business attire. "Morning, Mom," he greeted me, his tone pleasant but somehow distant. "Sleep okay?" "Better than usual," I replied, accepting the mug he offered. "It's quiet this morning." "Penny took the morning off," he explained, stirring cream into his own coffee. "Thought it would be good to have a smooth transition when you leave, and my meetings don't start until noon today." Their coordinated effort to manage my departure struck me as both considerate and slightly unsettling, as if they were attempting to control the narrative of my going. "That's nice," I said, sipping my coffee and trying to shake off the feeling that something had shifted overnight. "I should finish packing after breakfast. I've still got a few things scattered around." Joel nodded, checking his watch. "The 10:30 train, right? We should leave by 9:45 to be safe." The message was clear. Our timeline was set, the countdown to my departure officially begun. As I finished my coffee, I couldn't help but feel that in choosing to stand firm on my financial boundaries, I had crossed a point of no return in my relationship with Joel and Penny. What that meant for our future as a family remained to be seen, but one thing was certain: things would never quite be the same again. The remaining time before my departure passed with an almost choreographed efficiency. Joel helped carry my suitcase downstairs while I gathered the last of my belongings from the bathroom. Penny remained in the nursery with Eliza, emerging only when I was nearly ready to leave. "I've made a list of Eliza's current schedule," I said, placing a neatly written sheet of paper on the kitchen counter, "and notes about which foods she seems to enjoy and which ones she's not quite ready for yet." "Thank you," Penny replied, bouncing Eliza gently on her hip. "That's very thorough." "Well, I wanted to make sure you had all the information, especially since your mother might have different approaches than I do." I reached out to stroke Eliza's cheek, my heart aching at the thought of leaving her. "Goodbye, sweet girl. Grandma's going to miss you so much." Eliza babbled and reached for me with pudgy hands. I took her briefly into my arms for one last cuddle, breathing in her baby scent and pressing my lips to her soft hair. "We should get going," Joel said, checking his watch. "Don't want to miss that train." I handed Eliza back to Penny with reluctance, my arms feeling suddenly empty. "Of course. Well, goodbye, Penny. Thank you for having me." "Thank you for all your help," she responded, her tone professional but not unkind. It made a difference during a challenging week. The formality of our exchange felt strange after a week of living in close quarters, but perhaps it was easier this way, acknowledging the transactional nature of what our relationship had become. The drive to the train station was quiet. Joel focused on traffic while I gazed out the window, watching the suburban landscape roll by. The silence between us felt heavy with unspoken words, but neither of us seemed ready to bridge the gap. As we approached the station, Joel finally spoke. "Mom, I've been thinking about what you said, about living within our means. Maybe you're right that we overextended ourselves with the house." I turned to look at him, surprised by this concession. It's a beautiful home, Joel. I just worry about the financial pressure it puts on you both. He nodded, his eyes fixed on the road. Penny and I talked a lot last night. We're going to look at our budget, see where we can cut back. Maybe refinance the mortgage for a longer term to lower the monthly payments. That sounds sensible, I said carefully, not wanting to push too hard on this small opening. There are always options. Yeah. He pulled into the station drop-off area and put the car in park. About the financial support, we appreciate whatever you can do. Even $500 a month would help. I can manage that, I assured him, relief washing over me at this apparent acceptance of my proposed reduction. And I'm always here to help with Eliza when you need me. Just, maybe next time we can figure out a better sleeping arrangement. A small smile flickered across his face. Deal. He helped me with my suitcase, walking me to the platform where my train was already waiting. As we stood there, I felt a sudden impulse to clear the air completely. Joel, I hope you understand that reducing my financial support doesn't mean I love you or Eliza any less. It's simply about ensuring I have the resources to take care of myself as I age. He nodded, his expression softening. I know, Mom. It's just been a stressful time with the baby and work and everything. We shouldn't have put so much pressure on you. The babysitting, the couch, all of it. I'm sorry about that. His apology, unexpected and sincere, brought tears to my eyes. I reached up to hug him, feeling him return the embrace with genuine warmth. I love you, I whispered. Always have. Always will. Love you too, Mom. The train's departure announcement broke our moment. I boarded with a final wave, finding a window seat where I could see Joel still standing on the platform. As the train pulled away, he raised his hand in farewell, and I felt a tentative hope that perhaps we had found our way to a new understanding. The journey home passed in a blur of pastoral scenery and quiet reflection. By the time I arrived at my station, a sense of calm had settled over me. The taxi ride to my apartment building was brief, and when I finally unlocked my front door and stepped inside, the familiar comfort of my own space welcomed me like an old friend. I set down my suitcase and moved through the rooms, reacquainting myself with my own belongings, my own rhythms. The afternoon sunlight streamed through the windows, casting a golden glow across my living room. My plants had been well tended by Cornelia, and a small note on the kitchen counter informed me she had restocked my refrigerator with basics: milk, eggs, bread, knowing I'd been away. I sank into my comfortable armchair with a sigh of relief, my body relaxing for what felt like the first time in days. The silence of my apartment wasn't lonely, but peaceful, a chosen solitude rather than isolation. Phone buzzed with a text message. Expecting Cornelia checking on my return, I was surprised to see Joel's name on the screen. The message was brief but sent a chill through me. Mom, there's a problem with your last bank transfer. Bank says it was rejected due to insufficient funds. Need to talk ASAP. I stared at Joel's text message, confusion washing over me. I had specifically told the bank representative to hold the transfer until I could review my finances. How could it have been rejected for insufficient funds when it shouldn't have processed at all? With trembling fingers, I opened my banking app. The home screen displayed my checking account balance, $487.32, exactly as the bank representative had indicated yesterday. But there was a new transaction listed. Transfer attempt, failed with today's date. I immediately called the bank, navigating through the automated system until I reached a customer service representative. After verifying my identity, I explained the situation. Yes, Mrs. Bennett, the representative confirmed after reviewing my account. It appears the system attempted to process your scheduled monthly transfer despite the hold request. The transfer failed due to insufficient funds, and unfortunately, there's a $35 returned payment fee that's been applied to your account. But I specifically asked for the transfer to be canceled, I protested. I spoke with Marcus yesterday. Morning. I do see a note here from Marcus about your call, she acknowledged. But it appears he placed a hold on next month's transfer, not the one scheduled for today. That's why the system attempted to process it. My heart sank as I realized the miscommunication. Can you remove the fee? This was clearly an error on the bank's part. I'll see what I can do, she said, placing me on hold. After several minutes, she returned. I've submitted a request to reverse the fee, but it will take 3 to 5 business days to process. In the meantime, your current balance is $452.32 after. Ending the call, I sat in stunned silence. Not only had the transfer to Joel failed, but I'd been charged a fee that dropped my balance even lower. And now Joel knew, or at least suspected, that my financial situation was more precarious than I'd let on. As if on cue, my phone rang with Joel's number. I took a deep breath before answering. Mom, he began without preamble. What's going on? The bank notification says the transfer failed because of insufficient funds. Are you really that tight? On money? I closed my eyes, embarrassment and vulnerability washing over me. There was a miscommunication with the bank. I asked them to hold the transfer, but they tried to process it anyway. But if you had the money, it would have gone through. Joel persisted. Do you not have $2,000 in your account? The direct question left no room for evasion. No, Joel, I don't. The monthly transfers have been depleting my savings faster than I realized. That's why I needed to reduce the amount. A long silence followed. Why didn't you just tell me things were that tight? He finally asked, his voice softer now. I was embarrassed, I admitted, the truth painful but necessary. I didn't want you to worry about me or think I couldn't manage my own finances. And I didn't want to disappoint you. Mom. The word held a mixture of exasperation and concern. You've been sending us money you don't really have? I have the money in savings, I clarified. But I've been transferring from savings to checking each month to cover your payment. If I continue at this rate, my savings will be gone within a few years. Another silence, longer this time. When Joel spoke again, his tone had changed. More businesslike, almost detached. Okay, well, obviously we can't accept money you don't have. We'll figure something else out. I can still help with a smaller amount, I offered, not wanting him to think I was abandoning them entirely. The $500 we discussed. No, he interrupted firmly. No more transfers. Not if it's putting you in this position. The finality in his voice caught me off guard. Joel, are you sure? I want to help. Just not at the level I've been. We'll be fine, he said, though his tone suggested otherwise. Penny and I will work it out. I should go now. I have a meeting starting in 5 minutes. Before I could respond, the call ended, leaving me staring at my phone in confusion. Joel's abrupt shift from concern to detachment was jarring, and his refusal of any financial help seemed more like punishment than pragmatism. I set my phone down and moved to the kitchen to make tea, my hands shaking slightly as I filled the kettle. As the water heated, I leaned against the counter, sudden exhaustion washing over me. The week of inadequate sleep on uncomfortable surfaces, the emotional strain of confronting financial realities, the physical toll of caring for Eliza with my back condition. It all crashed down at once, leaving me drained and disoriented. The tea kettle whistled, startling me from my thoughts. I prepared my cup mechanically, then carried it to the living room window that overlooked the community garden below. The evening sunlight illuminated the neat rows of vegetables and flowers, the result of collective effort and care. My phone buzzed again, a text from Penny this time. Joel told me about the bank transfer. We're not taking any more money from you. This arrangement isn't working for anyone. The coldness of her message stung, but it was the phrase, taking money from you, that hurt most deeply. As if they'd been reluctant recipients of charity rather than family I'd chosen to support. Didn't reply immediately. unsure what response could possibly bridge the widening gulf between us. Instead, I sipped my tea and watched the shadows lengthen in the garden below, trying to process how quickly things had deteriorated. What had begun as a loving gesture, helping my son and his family afford their home, had somehow transformed into a source of resentment and distance. My week-long stay, intended to provide support during a stressful time, had exposed uncomfortable truths about our relationship that none of us seemed prepared to address. As evening settled over my apartment, I found myself in a familiar space that suddenly felt empty in a way it hadn't before. The silence, which had seemed peaceful upon my arrival, now felt oppressive. The distance from Joel, Penny, and especially Eliza ached like a physical wound. For the first time since Frank's death, I felt truly alone, not just living alone, but isolated from the most important people in my life. The weight of this realization pressed down on me as darkness gradually filled my living room, and I made no move to turn on the lights. The morning light filtering through my curtains woke me from a fitful sleep. I had eventually moved from the armchair to my bed, grateful for the familiar comfort of my own mattress despite my troubled mind. My back pain had eased somewhat overnight, but a new ache had taken residence in my heart. I made coffee and carried it to my small balcony, watching the early risers in the garden below. Cornelia was already there, tending to the tomato plants we'd planted together in early spring. She looked up, catching sight of me, and waved cheerfully. I waved back, a genuine smile finding its way to my face for the first time since yesterday's difficult conversations. After breakfast, I called Miriam, my Miriam, not Hudson's wife, to let her know I was home. Her familiar voice brought immediate comfort. "Loretta, you're back early. How was the great babysitting adventure?" I hesitated, unsure how much to share. "It was educational." "That bad, huh?" Miriam's perception had always been razor sharp. "Spill it. What happened?" "Over the next half hour." I found myself pouring out the entire story. The uncomfortable sleeping arrangements, the escalating back pain, the gradual realization that I was being treated more as help than family. And finally, the financial confrontation and its aftermath. "Oh, Loretta," Miriam sighed when I finished. "I wish I could say I'm surprised, but this is becoming a pattern with our generation. My daughter treats me the same way, like an ATM with babysitting capabilities. I just don't understand how—" "It went so wrong," I said, the confusion that had plagued me all night still present. I wanted to help them, not enable dependency. "That's exactly it," Miriam replied thoughtfully. "There's a difference between supporting and enabling. You crossed that line somewhere along the way, and now everyone's struggling to find the new boundary." Her words resonated with something that had been forming in my mind. I think I've been trying to fill Frank's absence by making myself indispensable to Joel and Penny. Being needed felt like still having a purpose. "Ah," Miriam said softly. "And now you're discovering that you need to be valued, not just needed." The simple truth of her statement struck me like a revelation. That was precisely it. I had confused being needed with being valued. Joel and Penny certainly needed my financial support and childcare assistance. But that need hadn't translated into the respect and consideration that would have indicated true value. "So what do I do now?" I asked. Joel's refusing any financial help, even the reduced amount I offered. And Penny's message made it clear they see my support as some kind of burden on me that they're now nobly refusing. "Give it time," Miriam advised. "They're embarrassed and probably a bit ashamed. Pride is a powerful thing, especially when money is involved. But more importantly, you need to figure out what you want your relationship with them to look like going forward." After we hung up, I sat with that question. What did I want? Not the previous arrangement, certainly. The unbalanced financial support, the taken-for-granted assistance, the disregard for my comfort and well-being. But not this sudden severing either. This cold distance that threatened my relationship with my son and access to my granddaughter. I wanted connection without exploitation, love without obligation, support without sacrifice. Was that possible? My phone remained silent throughout the day. No further messages from Joel or Penny, not even a picture of Eliza, which Joel had occasionally sent before my visit. The silence spoke volumes about the rupture my financial honesty had caused. By late afternoon, I had made a decision. Instead of waiting for them to determine the shape of our future relationship, I would take the initiative, not with apologies or backtracking on my financial boundaries, but with a clear, loving statement of what I could offer and what I needed in return. I drafted an email, carefully choosing each word. Dear Joel and Penny, I've been reflecting on our conversations yesterday, and I want to clarify a few things that may have been lost in the emotion of the moment. First, my financial situation is stable, but not unlimited. The monthly transfers I've been making were more than I could sustain long-term, which is why I needed to reduce them. This isn't about unwillingness to help. It's about responsible financial planning for all of us. Second, I treasure my role as Eliza's grandmother and want to be present in her life. The joy she brings me is immeasurable, and watching her grow is one of my greatest privileges. That said, the arrangements during my stay last week weren't sustainable either. At my age, proper rest and consideration for my physical limitations aren't luxuries, they're necessities. I believe we can find a better balance that respects everyone's needs. Here's what I propose. Instead of monthly transfers, I'd like to establish a college fund for Eliza. I can contribute $300 monthly to this fund, which will grow over time and provide for her education. 2. I'm happy to help with childcare regularly, perhaps 1 or 2 days a week, but with the understanding that I'll return to my apartment in the evenings. 3. For occasional overnight stays, I'll need a proper sleeping arrangement, either a real bed or at minimum a quality air mattress in a private space. I love you both, and I want us to find a way forward that strengthens our family bonds rather than straining them. Money and childcare arrangements shouldn't come between us, but neither should they come at the expense of mutual respect and consideration. Please take some time to think about this. I'm open to your thoughts and alternative suggestions. With love. Mom, I read the email several times, making small adjustments until it felt right, direct but gentle, firm on boundaries while open to dialogue. Then, before I could second-guess myself, I pressed send. Setting my phone aside, I felt a surprising sense of liberation. Whatever their response, I had taken a step toward authenticity in our relationship. I had articulated my worth and my boundaries, while affirming my love and commitment to them. For the first time since the confrontation, I felt hopeful. Not that things would immediately return to normal, there was no normal to return to, but that we might find a new equilibrium based on mutual respect rather than unspoken expectations and one-sided sacrifice. As evening approached, I decided to join Cornelia in the community garden. Tending to growing things had always brought me peace, and the simple act of getting my hands in soil might help ground me during this uncertain time. With renewed energy, I changed into gardening clothes and headed downstairs, ready to reconnect with my community and myself. 3 days passed with no response to my email. Each morning, I checked my phone upon waking, hoping to see a message from Joel or Penny, but the silence continued. No calls, no texts, not even the occasional photo of Eliza that had once been routine. I tried to resume my normal activities, attending my book club, volunteering at the community center, tending the garden with Cornelia, but a persistent heaviness followed me. At odd moments throughout the day, I would find myself wondering what Eliza was doing, whether she missed me, if Joel and Penny had hired someone to help with her care. On the 4th day, as I was returning from the grocery store, I ran into my neighbor Judd in the elevator. He was carrying his mail, including a glossy real estate magazine. Thinking of moving? I asked, making conversation as we ascended. Just browsing, he replied with a shrug. Always curious about property values in the area. Did you know the Hendersons and Forby sold their place for almost double what they paid 5 years ago? Market's crazy right now. His casual comment triggered a thought that had been forming in my subconscious. If property values had risen so dramatically, what about Joel and Penny's house? They had purchased it just over a year ago, at what Joel had described as a stretch for their budget. Back in my apartment, I turned to my computer and began researching. The suburban housing market where Joel and Penny lived had indeed seen substantial growth, nearly 15% in the past year alone. Their property, purchased for what I now knew was an ambitious $760,000, could potentially be worth close to $875,000 today. With this new information, I began to see their situation differently. They weren't necessarily trapped in an unaffordable house, they had options. Downsizing to a more modest home could eliminate their need for my financial support entirely, while potentially leaving them with substantial equity. As I considered this possibility, my phone finally chimed with a text message from Joel. "Mom, we need to talk. Are you free tomorrow evening? Penny and I would like to come by around 6. My heart raced at this unexpected development. Not a call or an email response, but an in-person visit. The formality of the request suggested this wasn't a casual reconciliation, but something more deliberate. I texted back a simple, "Yes, I'll be here," then spent the rest of the day alternating between anticipation and anxiety. What did they want to discuss? Had my email made them reconsider our relationship? Or were they coming to deliver some final pronouncement about our future interactions? That evening, I prepared my apartment meticulously, cleaning already clean surfaces and arranging fresh flowers in the living room. I baked a batch of oatmeal cookies, Joel's favorite since childhood, and planned a simple dinner in case they hadn't eaten. As I moved through these preparations, I realized I was girding myself for a confrontation of sorts. Not necessarily hostile, but decisive. Whatever Joel and Penny wanted to discuss, I needed to be ready to stand my ground while remaining open to genuine reconciliation. Before going to bed, I reread my email to them, confirming in my mind that my proposed boundaries were reasonable and my offered support still generous despite the reduction. I had articulated my worth and my limits clearly. Now I needed the courage to maintain them in the face of whatever tomorrow's meeting might bring. The next day crawled by with excruciating slowness. I tried to occupy myself with routine tasks, watering plants, organizing my recipe collection, even tackling the long-postponed sorting of Frank's old files. But my mind continually drifted to the evening's impending conversation. By late afternoon, I had changed outfits twice, rearranged the living room furniture subtly, and checked my phone countless times despite knowing Joel and Penny weren't due for hours. At precisely 5:58 p.m., the building's intercom buzzed. "Mrs. Bennett, your son and his wife are here to see you," announced the doorman. "Please send them up, Thomas." "Thank you." My voice sounded steadier than I felt. When the knock came, I took a deep breath, smoothed my hands over my slacks, and opened the door. Joel stood there with Penny beside him, but what caught my attention immediately was the absence of Eliza. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. "I thought you might bring Eliza." "She's with my mother," Penny replied, her tone neutral as she entered my apartment. "We thought it would be better to talk without distractions." That single sentence confirmed the seriousness of the conversation to come. This wasn't a family visit, but a formal discussion, intentionally childless to maintain focus. I led them to the living room, where I'd set out cookies and coffee. Joel declined both with a slight wave of his hand, while Penny sat perched on the edge of the sofa, her posture rigid and professional. "Mom," Joel began after we were all seated, "we've been doing a lot of thinking since your email, about our financial situation, about our house, about our relationship with you." I nodded, waiting for him to continue. Your email made us realize we've been living beyond our means in several ways, he continued. And he hesitated, searching for the right word. Presumptuous about your role in supporting that lifestyle. What Joel is trying to say, Penny interjected, her voice precise, is that we've made some decisions based on your email and our own calculations. My heart quickened. What kind of decisions? Joel and Penny exchanged a glance before he answered. We're selling the house. The statement hung in the air between us, both shocking and somehow inevitable. We've already spoken with a realtor, Penny continued, taking over the explanation. Given the current market, we should be able to sell quickly and at a significant profit. We found a smaller house in a neighboring community. Still good schools, but much more manageable payments. I see, I said, processing this unexpected development. That sounds like a practical solution. It is, Joel agreed. But that's not all we wanted to discuss. He leaned forward, his expression more serious than I'd seen it in years. Mom, the way we treated you during your stay with us was inexcusable. The sleeping arrangements, the expectations about childcare, the way we just assumed you would handle everything, it was disrespectful and thoughtless. The direct acknowledgement caught me off guard. I had prepared for defensiveness or even accusations, not this straightforward admission. We took advantage of your generosity, Penny added, her professional facade softening slightly. Both financially and personally. It wasn't intentional, but that doesn't make it acceptable. What changed? I asked, genuinely curious about this apparent epiphany. Joel smiled ruefully. Would you believe it was Hudson? Hudson, I repeated, confused. After you left, he called to follow up on the celebration dinner. When I mentioned you'd gone home earlier than planned because of back pain from the pull-out couch, he was horrified. You had your mother sleeping on a pull-out while she took care of your baby? His exact words. Hearing it from someone else made us see how it looked, how it was. The unexpected candor from Joel and Penny created a moment of genuine connection between us. The defensiveness I had anticipated was nowhere to be found, replaced instead by a humility that made space for real dialogue. I appreciate hearing that, I said carefully. I didn't want to make a fuss about the sleeping arrangements, but yes, it was difficult, especially with my back condition. You shouldn't have had to mention it at all, Joel replied, shaking his head. We should have considered your comfort from the beginning. Penny reached for one of the cookies I'd set out, breaking her earlier restraint. The part in your email about being valued, not just needed. That really hit home for me. My own mother was always so busy with her career that when she did spend time with me, it felt like an obligation, not a choice. I realized I've been perpetuating that same dynamic with you. Her vulnerability surprised me. In the year since Joel had married Penny, she had maintained a polite but professional distance that made it difficult to know her on a personal level. This glimpse into her childhood experience offered new context for her behavior. Thank you for sharing that, Penny, I said sincerely. And I want you both to know that I love Eliza and want to be part of her life. I just need us to find arrangements that work for everyone. Joel nodded. That's actually the other thing we wanted to discuss. We've been thinking about your suggestion of regular childcare days instead of extended stays. Once we move to the new house, Penny continued, we'll have a proper guest room with a real bed. We'd love for you to visit regularly, maybe one weekend a month. And if you're still willing to watch Eliza 1 or 2 days a week, we could bring her to you here, or you could come to us but return home in the evening. That sounds very reasonable, I said, feeling a weight lifting from my shoulders. They had actually considered my suggestions and were offering a compromise that respected my boundaries. And about the financial support, Joel added, his tone growing more serious. We don't want to accept any more direct transfers. The house sale and downsizing will put us in a much better position. However, Penny interjected, We love your idea about Eliza's college fund. If you're still willing to contribute to that, it would be a meaningful way to help secure her future without creating unhealthy dynamics in the present. The thoughtfulness of their response moved me deeply. They had clearly taken time to consider, not just the practical aspects of my email, but the emotional subtext as well. I would be delighted to start that college fund, I said, feeling tears threatening at the corners of my eyes. And I have something else I'd like to propose. I rose and retrieved a small box from my desk drawer. Inside was Frank's pocket watch, a family heirloom he had treasured. This was your father's, I said, handing the box to Joel. He would have wanted Eliza to have something of his, even though they never met. Perhaps you could hold it for her, until she's older. Joel opened the box, his expression softening as he recognized the watch. Dad carried this everywhere, he said quietly. Eliza should definitely have it. We could put it in a display case in her room, Penny suggested, her voice gentler than I'd ever heard it. So she grows up seeing it, knowing it was her grandfather's. The evening continued. We shared a simple meal I had prepared, our conversation flowing more naturally than it had in months. They showed me pictures of Eliza from the past few days, including one of her attempting to crawl, her determined expression so reminiscent of Joel as a baby that it made us all laugh. When they finally prepared to leave, the air between us felt cleared, refreshed by honest communication and mutual respect. At the door, Joel hugged me tightly, whispering, "I'm sorry, Mom. Thank you for not giving up on us." Penny's goodbye was equally warm if more reserved, but her words carried genuine sincerity. We'll bring Eliza to visit next weekend if that works for you, and I promise there will be no pull-out couches in our new house. After they left, I stood in my quiet apartment, processing the unexpected turn the evening had taken. What I had feared would be a confrontation had instead become a reconciliation, a reset of boundaries and expectations that honored everyone's needs. The path forward wasn't perfect. Real relationships never are. But it was honest. We had moved beyond the crisis point to find a new equilibrium based on mutual respect, rather than unspoken expectations or one-sided sacrifice. As I prepared for bed that night, I realized that in standing up for my own worth, I had, paradoxically, strengthened my relationship with my son's family. By refusing to be merely useful, I had created space to be truly valued, not just as a financial resource or a convenient babysitter, but as a person with needs, boundaries, and wisdom to contribute. The dignity I had claimed for myself had, in the end, dignified us all. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.